That's awesome, Titus. I know. We didn't have state testing with COVID. I know. Well, the thing is too though, what those tests are ongoing every year. So just because you didn't have to go to them that year doesn't mean that those state tests like necessarily went away. You just have more to do later, if that makes sense. So it will be good for you to take your end of course test after you've done your biology work because that's going to make it the most effective time for you to do it is right after you've learned the information versus next year. You know what I mean? So some students that took biology earlier might be taking the biology end of course exam this year. So I feel like it would be harder to still have that stuff fresh in your mind. We have Caden Clark Kent. He kind of does. Peter Parker. We have a superhero in our class. Awesome. Well, let's look at today's agenda. I just want to tell you we are ahead of schedule. I don't know how, other than that we're just that awesome. All right, we're actually in Wednesday's lesson today. We are reviewing for what we call our mid-unit test. Okay, so our mid-unit test is because Unit 5 is a little bit longer. We split up that information. So starting today, tomorrow, you can start taking your mid-unit test. In fact, tomorrow during class time, we're going to actually take it because we are ahead of lessons. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to review for your mid-unit test. And then tomorrow you're going to come to class, but we're going to take it in class and then you're going to have it done. How can you get your grade up? So one thing you can do to get your grade up is do study guides. Study guides are extra credit and they also have test questions on them. So that's a great way. Another way is a lot of your quiz questions are you can take again. So if you haven't taken your quizzes multiple times to get the highest score possible, I recommend you do that. So any study guide is extra credit. Any of your quizzes between your tests, you can take multiple times. And sometimes occasionally, I will let you take your test more than once. So check that out. And that would be a great way. And if you're still not there and you are interested in getting your grade up, send me an email and we'll look at it on a more personal basis. Okay. So today we're going to go over things again that we've already covered, such as these topics. Would somebody like to read them for us today? Goals for the day.
Sure.
Woohoo!
I'm listening to the Doctor Strange, trailer music. Describe exponential growth in carrying capacity. Identify and describe the different trophic levels, and what is the food chain and food web. Can we learn this stuff?
Yeah. Which one sounds less familiar?
Exponential growth?
Oh yeah. So you'll remember this. Remember we talked about exponential growth is when we kind of drew a little map and we'll have a slide here in a minute that goes over it. But remember we talked about how carrying capacity, that fishbowl, is a certain spot. And when a population grows exponentially, Kaden, it basically just grows really, really fast. And it grows over that carrying capacity line. Does that make sense? So maybe there's like a I don't know, maybe this spring there's an influx of grasshopper population. All right, there's lots of grasshoppers that grow. Therefore, maybe the rabbit production or whatever frog production that eats those grows really, really fast. All right. But that isn't sustainable. That isn't like how many grasshoppers are typically in the ecosystem. So, because we can't sustain that grasshopper population, it exponentially grows really quick. But then remember, we say it falls until it gets back to that carrying capacity line and then just kind of hovers over that carrying capacity. So, exponential growth just means when a population gets big really, really fast. That isn't, yep, it goes to carrying capacity and usually exceeds carrying capacity. It's just like, whoa, it's not natural. It's not typical for an environment, but it does happen. But then you'll see species die off and hover around that line. It'll do the wave. It'll do the wave. It'll be good for your dance moves. Yes. So we'll review those. And we talked about trophic. Trophic is another word for what? It's a fancy biology word for, yes, energy. And yesterday we had an awesome lesson where you guys basically showed us the difference between a food chain and food web, but we'll look at those here in a minute too. So yes, see, I knew we had a slide. So exponential growth, all right, just means when an individual in a population reproduces super quickly over time. So here it even uses spring as an example. It uses algae. And this is actually true often of algae in the spring, as it goes from nothing, right? Because algae is not growing very often in the winter. And it just takes off and grows and grows and grows and grows very quickly. Algae is also another perfect example of exponential growth because it grows asexually, right? Meaning that it grows by mitosis. It doesn't need a partner, all right? Until it hits this carrying capacity, which just says, whoa, 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 whoa. We can only handle so much algae. We can only sustain so much algae in the ecosystem. Asexual doesn't necessarily mean no attraction. It just means that I can produce by myself as an individual. Remember, if I reproduced asexually, if my finger broke off and I only had 4 fingers, that finger could float off or fall to the ground and grow a whole nother Mrs. Rittenhouse. Now, it wouldn't grow anything that looks anything to, it would look identical to me. It would have the same DNA, right? Just like starfish. That's what starfish do. That's what coral does. They reproduce, but when they reproduce asexually, and they reproduce with 0 genetic diversity. Just means there's clone after clone after clone after clone. So if Caden's dog reproduced asexually, there would be like 100 of Caden's dogs running around that had the exact same DNA, that looked the same. Remember, we talked about how that's like for specifically like organisms that are what we call sessile. Sessile. Everybody type that in chat. Sessile. Sessile is another word that just means they're not mobile. What does it mean to be mobile or mobile? Sessile and mobile are opposites. What? Yes, mobile means to move. All right, so if we know mobile and sessile are opposites, and mobile or mobile means to move, What do you think sessile means? Yeah, right, Diamond. To stay. So sessile organisms don't move. It means they're rooted to something. So like coral is rooted to a rock and a reef. So usually organisms that reproduce asexually are not able to move, right? So can they choose a spouse very easily? Can they choose a partner very easily? They're not like, that piece of coral looks cute. I'm gonna walk over there. No, the coral is stuck, right? They're not going anywhere. So they don't have the ability to reproduce. So they have adapted and they reproduce asexually. They're stuck. Good. Sorry, that was just a little extra lesson on today. All right, but we were talking about because algae, what? It's sessile, it floats. It doesn't have control of its movement. So a lot of times those organisms are going to be our asexual reproducers. And as long as algae has what it needs to grow, as long as it has nutrients, as long as it has sunshine, algae is green. So if something is green, what does that tell you? How could it potentially get its energy if it's green? Yep, it gets it from the sun, meaning it could be a photosynthesized critter, whether it be a plant or an animal, right? It uses photosynthesis to get its energy. And you'll see that a lot of our asexual reproducers are photosynthesizers. And this is perfect. Where are our organisms that get their energy through photosynthesis in our food chain or in our ecosystems? How do we categorize them? Yes! Look how smart you guys are. They're our producers. Good. They're at the bottom of the food chain, but that doesn't mean they're weak or small or unimportant. They're very important, and they are, as far as energy level goes, how pure is their energy? Is their energy diluted or is their energy pure? Yes. Yes. Their trophic levels are through the roof because they're getting their energy from the source, the sun. Perfect. Does anyone remember the word I taught you yesterday? I kept using it accidentally instead of producer. It has the word troph in it. Troph meaning energy. It was a two-part word that we dissected. Yes! Good job, Bree. An autotroph automatically makes its own energy. I need coffee, Kaden. My brain doesn't work when I don't have coffee. You guys are doing fantastic, though. Look, you're carrying us all the way through this. We aren't doing case strategy and R strategy. Let's look at this. All right. So what choice is not an example of an ecosystem? What do you think? Which is not an example of an ecosystem? A tidal pool, a digestive system, carbon dioxide, or a prairie? Yes, you are right. We have a majority of us in on C, carbon dioxide. All right, and that is the correct answer. Carbon dioxide is a compound. All right, it's not living. It's CO2. It's what we breathe in. It is not an example of an ecosystem. Right? We talked about how your digestive tract, that seems kind of like a tricky answer. Yep, we did. It is, but it is an ecosystem because we talked about the bacteria you have in your intestine and that is actually a little ecosystem of itself. Yes, so these are all going to be questions that you see on your mid-unit test that we're going to take tomorrow. All right, and they are going to be some of your quiz questions. So the Sonoran Desert is a unique ecosystem. What are the two main parts? Another kind of tricky question. We talked about abiotic and biotic factors. What would those be? And I'm actually going to change the answer on this and get rid of one of the answer choices because I do think one of them are tricky. Yes, it does. To check your understanding and make sure I know that you know all of that stuff. So this one is the correct answer. The organisms and abiotic factors. But that, like the sand in plants, is just kind of a weird way of kind of saying the same thing because plants are biotic and the sand is abiotic. I'm going to get rid of that choice. What about this one? What is a biotic factor in a coral reef system? What is a biotic? Dissolved oxygen, a lionfish, the level of salinity, salinity meaning salt, or the level of the tide. You guys rocked that. It is correct. The lionfish is biotic. It is our living thing in the ecosystem. Right? So you might want to save these, note these questions. That's okay. Right? So our biotic factors are our living, our abiotic, are non-living. And why are we talking about those? Well, because we've talked about this all throughout the unit. That everything in life is about balance, right? We need enough food in order for the animals to survive. If too many organisms populate, then they eat all of the and use the resources of the abiotic factors. So everything it needs to be at a balance. All right. I need you to help me with this. So we can either draw lines or you can type, or I feel like drawing is just not going to work because of space. But can you help me? All right, with what the grass, the prairie dog, snake, and hawk are going to be. Which are going to be our producers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. Perfect, Diamond. The plants are the producers. Can someone write that up there? It's too cute to die. I know, isn't that the fact of life? Somebody want to write producers up here for me, right here? Oh, I'm sorry. That's so annoying. I need to get that so it doesn't do that when come in. I don't like that it does that. All right, you should have permissions now. So let's write producers above the grass. What would our prairie dog be? Producer, primary, secondary, tertiary. Perfect. Our prairie dog would be a primary. Thank you for writing that up there. Could someone write primary? Yes, awesome. What about the snake? That would be a, yes, secondary. Everybody type these to me. Good job, Madison and Isaiah. What about the hawk? Yes. The hawk would be tertiary. Tertiary. How do we feel on this? Smiley face review. Good. It looks like a lot of us are feeling good. If you're feeling meh or sad, send me an email and I can try to send you some resources that help you better understand that. All right, so a food chain. We talked about this yesterday being a direct path, one straight path of energy sources. So in our ecosystem is best represented by a food web, right? A food chain, you can find a food chain within a food web. So let's look at this food web. Can someone type in chat or get on their microphone and tell me one food web inside of this food chain? So this represents a lot of relationships. Can someone? Good, Madison. So grass to the Arctic hare to the wolf. That's one food chain within this food web. That is the question. All right. What are some food chains, single pass, within this food web? So grass, Arctic hare, wolf would be a food chain that's also represented within this food web. What's another one? What's another food chain? Good. Willow, the Arctic willow, to the mouse, to the hawk. And yes, thank God there is no penguin. How do you feel about food chains versus food webs? You know that food chains are direct, food webs are representative of a whole ecosystem and showing multiple relationships. Good. We feel, again, feeling pretty good across the board. I am not ignoring the few of you that have the meh face. Please, like I said, please touch base with me so that I can get resources in your hand to better clarify and help you understand that. And another good thing to do is practice. Practice really does start making things feel more comfortable when you practice stuff. All right, a ketone species is a species that plays a key role in maintaining ecosystem stability. All right. So I want to show you this example. Kelp is a good example of a keystone species. A keystone species because kelp is a favorite food for marine organisms called sea urchins. All right. Sea urchins are one of this cute little fella's favorite thing. All right, a sea otter's favorite thing to eat is a sea urchin. All right, so if we lose the kelp, we lose lots of sea urchins and we lose lots of sea otters. So some of those keystone species are going to be those species that are producers or our primary consumers at the bottom of the food chain, and we need them and we need lots of them. And if they aren't there, we have major problems in our ecosystem. One example of that, of an invasive species that kind of came in and took over a keystone species is the zebra mussel in Lake Erie. It came in on a ship, all right, from the ocean. The zebra mussel did. It was an ocean mussel. It came into the Great Lakes and it started eating up the algae. It became more dominant at eating the algae than some of our soft water crustaceans, and that became a ripple through the whole ecosystem in Lake Erie and some of the Great Lakes, and really threw a lot of things off. All right. I feel like we're doing good with this, being the sun's energy. We have our producers and our consumers. We know that our carnivores are the ones that eat the meat. Our herbivores are going to be some of our primary and secondary consumers that are going straight to that food source. I'm going to get down here to a couple more questions. All right, are you ready? And the Arctic energy pyramid, which trophic level or energy level has the least amount of energy available? Which trophic level has the least amount of energy available to it? Is it our producers at the bottom, our secondary consumers, our primary consumers, secondary or tertiary? Who gets the less of the energy for their food? Whose food is essentially more energy diluted? Has the least amount of energy? Good. That would be our tertiary consumers, right? The further we get away from the sun, all right, the higher up you are in that food web, the more diluted of energy your food is. Can somebody read the second question? Let's see if I think we have time for one more. Let's do one more. No, I think you're doing fine. Anybody want to read this last question?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll be fine. I'm just having a bunch of cuts and scratches from the dog. So, are we reading the middle one or are we reading the bottom one?
This middle one, if you don't mind.
Okay, there's a lump, man. You got me good. The tropic rainforest ecosystem near the Amazon River contains hundreds of food chains, which the term refers to the combination of all food chains within an ecosystem. Primary food chain, B ecosystem, C food web, and D trophic level.
Good. So I want to highlight this because if I'm reading this question, that's what all food chains within an ecosystem. That should stick out to me as I read the question. That's your indicator as what your answer would be. What are all food chains within an ecosystem called? Good. That would be the food web. Whoa, that wasn't very good. Not highlighting your food web. All right, last but not least, I'm going to read it real quick. Which phrase best describes a food chain? Is it one pathway, which energy moves from trophic level to the next? Various interconnected relationships, a relationship between predator and prey, or the types of producers in an ecosystem? I know you know this. What is it? Woo! Almost. We're split half and half. All right. Food chain. That's our 1-to-1, right? It's showing us one direct path. Our food web is going to show us all of them. So this would be one pathway. Okay, so the answer to this would be A. You're fine. This is all to learn and to sharpen us and make us better so that we answer these correctly as we take our mid-unit test. That will open up today, but tomorrow we're going to take it together in class. Be time efficient. All right. Your 5.08 quiz is open for you to take that as well. If you have any questions, send them to me. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. Thanks for being here, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye. It's not showing open.